This is Wild About Liberty, where the community joins together. Now here's your host, Terry Wild.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Wild About Liberty. We're here to try and give you the advantage of being able to hear from people who are on the ground doing different things in Fresno County. They're involved in the political world. They're involved in the Christian world. And we're trying to be able to get those people and get their message out on Wild About Liberty. And two of our guests today, I'm very happy and excited to introduce you to Fred Vanderhoof, who, Fred, you've been a regular, and we need you on this program to tell us about a lot of the things that are going on that affect people's lives. I mean, in a serious way. You've been the chairman of the Republican Party for many years, and so we're looking forward to hearing from you. And Kathy Reinhardt, thank you for coming on the program. You're not only important to us, you're vital to this program because you are our producer. And you keep the schedule, which I'm struggling with constantly. But with your help, we've made it, I don't know what, we've been a month and a half on the air so far?
Yeah.
I think so. And Kathy, you played a big part in that. Thank you. And so we're going to be talking about a number of things, but Fred, why don't you give us an update with your knowledge of what's going on in Fresno County?
Well, I can give you an update on Fresno County, but also the nation too, if you want. So,
let's do the nation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this affects every county, every state. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, yesterday, I believe it was, he signed a bill making illegal migrants, the entry from illegal migrants, a crime, a state crime. And that is the area that the federal government is supposed to be dealing with, but of course they don't do it. So you got one of the top governors of the country who's saying, I'm not going to wait anymore. And so he's making it a state crime, and up to 20 years in prison for repeat offenders who keep coming across. And we've got a lot of people that are in the drug trade, selling drugs, and the sex trade, and terrorists. There's actually been terrorists that have been caught, as we've heard. So he's not waiting around. So I think that's the people really appreciate that. Democrats, Republicans, and independents, all voters. Well, about 70% of all voters, they want something to be done about the border, and we keep hearing about it. People keep talking about it, but nothing gets done. So kudos to Governor Abbott down in Texas, who's doing something.
Exactly.
Here in Fresno, we're just we've only got a couple months left before the primary. The primary is coming up in about the first few days of February. The ballots will be sent out, and then the primary is the first few days of March 5th, I believe it is. So that's coming quickly, and we've got some key races in supervisor and Fresno City Council, other city councils around the area too. So, and then we're still watching the situation with the retirement of Kevin McCarthy, so Mike Boudreau, sheriff of Tulare County, is running, and Vince Fong is assemblyman down in Bakersfield, who's running, but he the state law says you can't run for two offices, and so he's running for assembly, but that he changed his mind after he realized that Kevin McCarthy's retiring, and so he's actually suing, I think, the Secretary of State to try to get around that law, which says you can't run for two offices.
What do you think? Is he going to pull it off?
I don't think so. I think the Secretary of State will prevail. It's written down. It's been a law for many years. I don't think he'll prevail. So I think Mike Boudreau, the sheriff of Tulare County, has a good shot at it.
Well, I think, Kathy, that you've been involved in a lot of things in the county. You see things maybe from a little different perspective. What's your take on how you see things lining up in the county for the upcoming election? What are some of your thoughts and concerns?
Well, my thoughts and concerns mostly are about the elections. Everybody that votes wants to make sure that their election is fair and legal and that their vote counts. And I know we've had some problems in the past and we're working on fixing them, but one of the most effective ways that anybody can help with the elections is to become a precinct captain and go out and just maybe, if you want, just talk to a couple people in your block. And we're going to have information available to pass out to people that they can take with them to discuss the points that are important to all the people in the United States here in our county, in our city. And we have 3 different levels. That's level 1. Level 2 is for your entire precinct. You go out and contact neighbors in your precinct and just talk to them about the issues. What are your concerns? What are the issues that you are concerned about? And make sure that if they haven't voted in the past, maybe they should register to vote and get out there, because that's our duty as a citizen in this country, to vote, to be involved in the government. And I know everybody's frustrated and we do a lot of complaining, but now it's time for action. And by becoming a precinct captain, you can get involved in this election and make a difference, because if people don't get out and vote, the changes aren't going to happen. So that's my biggest concern.
I think people who are listening, all of us have a different level of knowledge, of understanding about what is going on. But Fred, it's something that we've never experienced before, at least in my lifetime that I'm aware of, that there's an organized agenda to destroy America the way as we've known it to be, and to replace it with this kind of alternative. I don't know if you'd call it Marxism, communism. They're certainly following the Marxist playbook. We know that. But it's not easy to make yourself realize that this is a serious attack. I don't know what else to call it. Attack, a threat. And if we don't respond, and the only thing we can do to respond is voting, right? I mean, that's our weapon. That's the alternative to the things that are going on at the border, the things that are going on in the schools, all of these different issues in the libraries and our books. And if we don't vote, we don't win. We lose.
Right. Voting is the most important thing we have in this free country. And we're concerned because there's a lot of people that don't vote that should be voting, many conservatives, especially in churches. So we're trying to change that. And we do have some pastors, though, around this state and other states that are telling their congregations it is so important to vote to protect our freedom to be a believer.
Exactly.
And to have free speech. And so and this is there's so many issues. And one of them I just read about today. These guys, a lot of these guys are crazy, as you know. And so this one was actually in the news. It said humans contribute to global warming by breathing.
Oh my God!
And they're serious. Because it's got the I don't know, the gases or something that are out there. I mean, these guys they're crazy, and they're just communist. You put those two things together, and so we're also dealing with higher powers in Europe, especially with the what is it, WFO? Well, World Economic Forum.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And very,
Strauss.
very wealthy people, right? Klaus Strauss, I guess his name is. But there's a lot of other people that are involved in that too. So yeah, they're trying to control everything. They really want the world population to be much smaller. We're 8 billion now. and so they want to have it much smaller. They're
So
behind
that
a lot
means
of this.
people have to die. I mean, they
Right,
have to
right.
encourage death.
Right, exactly. Abortion and so forth. So, yeah, we're dealing with some big things, but when you read the Bible, it's just the same thing happens. Whether it's the 2,000 years before the flood, when things got so evil, and then you got Pharaoh,
Right.
and then you got Rome, the Roman Empire. Then things just keep happening like this. But in every instance, there's people who fight back. And God has a plan for our nation, for our world, and we just got to make sure we're, with Him. And it's not going to be easy, but there's a plan.
Well, Kathy, what do you think of that idea of a plan? How do you see the plan? What's your take on the plan?
Well, I agree with Fred. The World Economic Forum is they want one world order. They want to control everything. So in order to do that, that's one reason why they want people to die. So it'd be easier to control more people. But the basic thing I think is that we need to turn to God. He's the one that's in control, and we may not even understand why we're going through what we're going through right now. But if we look back through history, when you turn away from God, there's consequences to be paid. And right now, I just see a lot of similarities between what's happening now in past times in the Bible when people turned away from God. And, God's patient and He's merciful, but, He has His limits too. And it's important that we get involved in reading the Bible and following what it says and being obedient. And it's not always easy. A lot of times you have to make a lot of sacrifices, but it's time for us to start standing up and making sacrifices and fighting, because if we don't fight,
Exactly.
we're going to lose our country. And we're on the edge of that right now with the way things are going.
And that's not an exaggeration, is it? I mean, that's real.
Yeah, well, I mean, just look at all the things that happened during the pandemic, all the businesses being shut down. You couldn't go to church. I mean, and a lot of people lost their livelihoods because of the rules and regulations that were put into effect. And, you can't blame them because, they were trying
Who
to do
knew?
the best at the time.
Exactly.
But now we know a little bit better, and we need to learn from the things that happened in the past. Just like anything else that happens in history, you need to learn from your mistakes and move forward and make it better, and not bring about all the bad things that happened, but look at the positive things that are a result of what's happened.
Well, it seems to me, Fred, that we are mainly occupied with living our life. We got to get up in the morning. You have to have food to eat. You have to have clothes to wear. You have to go out the door, get in the car, have gas in the car. I mean, our life, we live every single day. And then something like this pandemic, for example, hit us, and nobody knew what to do. I didn't know what to do, except we stayed open here at Liberty Coalition, and I wasn't 100% sure in the beginning that was the right decision, but I went with my instincts. And so it's like the game is on. And now we're working our way out of all of that, and we need clear direction. We need credible information, which you're getting a lot of and helping us to understand the reality of what's going on. But you talked earlier about breathing. I mean, that's out of reality. That is insanity. It's some sort of, the Bible uses the word reprobate, and it means out of touch with reality. And that's what happens. God, I think, is giving us an opportunity. Who I wouldn't want any of this to have happened, but it's happened, and it really now motivates us to be able to declare who God is.
Right.
How do you see that?
Yeah, I do too. It's a great opportunity, and there's, like I say, there's been difficult times continually through history, and you think about the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, and it was a difficult time just to live, just to get up and, you had to go out. You can't go to the store to buy your food. You had to go out and harvest your crops, and sometimes the weather would destroy them. I mean, it's been difficult all the way through history, and so this is nothing new in the sense that we just got to keep fighting, and we will prevail.
But you know what I think our testimony is that has been given to us in this country? You look at the history. So you have a world that was governed by some sort of monarch or ruler or dictator. And up until, the 18th century, right? I spent time in Russia right after the fall of communism. So I was there in 1994. And they still occupied, they still had the mentality of being under the dictatorship of, say, Stalin or somebody like Stalin. And they didn't know how to rule themselves. They said they were free, and they were trying to be free, but they didn't have a functioning, reliable judicial system. They had corruption everywhere, and nobody knew how to be free. That country was completely incapable of absorbing and taking on the freedom and responsibility of being a free people. But then you look at this history, people have always been dominated until when? Until the Mayflower. Till somebody in Holland said, okay, we're getting out of here. We're going to find a place where we can have religious freedom. And that's the miracle. That's the heritage that we have in America. And now we're under pressure, and we have to respond to keep our freedom. But that's really what we're fighting for. That Mayflower moment in history took us away from the ruler of a monarch and an absolute, dictator, and said, okay, you're free. And then Benjamin Franklin said, yeah, as long as you can keep it.
Right. Yeah, that's right. We were the first country to be based on an idea, the idea of freedom, and faith was probably the biggest part of all of that in our Declaration, our Constitution, and almost all the founders said we are a nation of believers in God, and we want to keep that freedom, and they based the whole Constitution upon that. And it's really the first time in history that's been done. There's been a few countries since then that have done it too, but
exactly,
yeah, we are unique. We're at the point of losing all that. But like I say, there's been other times in history when other nations have been up against the wall and right at the point of losing everything. And look at the Israelites when they were told to go into the promised land, and there were 12 spies, and 10 of them said, we can't do it. There's giants in the land.
Exactly.
Joshua, Caleb said, let's go for it. But so, we're kind of at one of those points, and we can be encouraged by revivals going on around the world, and almost every continent, every continent for sure. I can say that. And Nicaragua, a little country in Central America, has 6 million people. They had a meeting, one huge meeting with 600,000 people. And they were preaching, and many of them came to know the Lord as their Savior. But that's 10% of the whole country. And so it's that's just one example.
Well, Kathy, you're a wife, you're a mother, you have a little different perspective on things, but how do you see how we should respond, and what's your advice on what people should do to save America?
Well, that's a tough question. Well, I think the best place to start is to start locally. I mean, people that have children in schools, I mean, look at all the different criteria, all the different programs that they have now that were never even thought of when I was in school, with the critical race theory and all the transgenderism and all those things. I mean, I can't imagine anybody that believes that mutilating children is a good thing, or
that's another insanity, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, it's just insane that a man can be a woman can be a man, and men can have babies. I mean, you have to be a lunatic to even remotely think that could be true.
Yes. One of the things that I see happening now is looking back at the history of the United States, and just like in any country throughout history, there are good people and bad people, and good things happen and bad things happen. But tearing down these statues of men that were leaders that did things that, weren't really morally correct at the time, like slavery. Slavery was around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and finally people realized, well, this is no way to treat people, because we're all children of God and we should all be respected and valued. And that to condemn people because they, at the time, did something that was accepted then, but it's not accepted now, to just say, oh, they're just evil, bad people, we can't even deal. That it doesn't make sense to me. History, we learn from our mistakes, hopefully, throughout history, and try not to repeat, the mistreatment of people or the persecution of people or the killing of people. But, human nature is what it is. But to try to erase and pretend that anything that happened back in our history makes us bad people, evil people, I don't think is a fair way to look at the history of our country and the things that have happened.
But I see that, Fred, as a tactic, don't you? I mean, they're redefining us the way they want us to be seen. So they're really running the show. I mean, I'm thinking we're here trying to justify we're white, and we aren't necessarily given to be a racist or a homophobe or whatever title they give us. We have to defend it and say, oh, no, that's not me. That's not me. And yet the Bible says everyone is wicked, deceitful and wicked above all things, who can know it. So our tendency is to not be godly until Christ comes in and changes our life. But that tactic is a political ploy to beat us. And how do you see combating that? What's our response? Like, we're on this program now talking about it because we want to bring people's attention to the fact that don't believe this stuff.
Yeah. Well, you got people in history who've demonstrated what to do. I mean, Winston Churchill he stood alone against Hitler. And this is long before the United States got involved in World War II. He was begging us to help, but we just, our Congress wouldn't do it. So he stood alone against Hitler, and he made some famous speeches. Just let's fight. We have to fight. He was a believer too.
Yeah,
and,
he was.
Yeah. So this is one example of what we have to do.
But he was gloriously imperfect.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about a guy that you wouldn't want to put him in charge of a factory. This guy had so many personal foibles and had maybe, chemical imbalance. But he had great instincts. I think God got a hold of him. And for him to have made the political commitment to not suing for peace, I don't know. It took someone of his courage, because he was being assaulted, mm-hmm. and his political career would have been over if certain things like happened in America with Washington and all of the heroes that we have. Churchill was just capable of saying no. And then he got the support of the King of England, which really saved him. If it wasn't for that, he would have been consumed, and history would have looked a lot differently.
Right. That's exactly what happened. That's true.
Yeah. But and so that makes me feel a little bit better because I can just tell people I'm not perfect either.
Right.
Well,
Who
George,
knows? I could be Winston Churchill.
or there's somebody that we all know that has a problem with using some foul language. He's bombastic, and I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about George S. Patton. And he was,
Yeah.
and who would have thought that he would be after the war, after World War II? The German High Command said there was one general from the United States that they feared, and that was George Patton. And so, yeah, I mean, God chooses some interesting characters down through history in the Bible. I mean, Samson, and King David wasn't exactly perfect. So,
You
on.
know what Patton, one of his famous sayings was, he said, "Don't die for your country. Let the other poor SOB die for his country."
Right. That's right.
And so
You got it.
that was a little controversial.
Yeah.
The old ladies loved him up until a certain point, but yeah, what a hero.
Right. So, but what both of those, Churchill, Patton, and people in our country.
Who's our
Washington,
Patton in Fresno County? Who's leading us through all this, do you think?
I don't know. We'll have to think about that a little bit.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I think you're one of them.
Oh,
I think
thank
you have
I
been.
don't know about that, but
I've been here 4 years, and I've watched your life. I've watched your career for 4 years, and you are an example to me and a lot of people. And you did a lot of good things leading the Republican Party. I mean, we had successes that I don't think we would have had otherwise, other than your leadership. But pulling it all together, we're dealing with so many different people with so many different views and dispositions. I mean, it's hard. It's like herding cats. And trying to bring this sense of unity in Fresno County, we're dealing with opposing viewpoints that would otherwise keep us from ever working with people, but we have to find a way to do it if we're going to succeed, don't we? And we do, right. You lived that life for quite a few years.
Right. Yeah, it's so important to be rowing the same way, and but it's always been like that through history, where you've got opposing views, even on your own team, and but we just got to keep strong. Fresno's the geographical center. Fresno County is the center of California, and I think that there's a lot of good things happening in the city. We were just talking to Tom Summers about it in the past and presently.
What a delightful guy!
Yeah.
What a witness and a testimony for
right. And California has had more faith-based meetings, revivals, whatever you want to call it, going back to 1900, 1907, the Azusa Street, and then Billy Graham really came on the scene in 1948 with his first big crusade in L.A., and you can go on and on and on. So there's a lot of ministries have started here in this state.
Yeah.
And it was the same. I mean, they were fighting World War I back in the early part of last century, then World War II, and then the Great Depression. Everybody, every age has something, an obstacle to overcome, and this is ours. And we just need to keep getting up and in the morning and going out and fighting and ask God for wisdom.
Well, Kathy, we're all trying to do something about this precinct program because the precinct program has proven, for many, many years to be one of the most effective ways to influence a vote and to get people to vote. And so, you and Kay, Fred, for years that I've been here, have tried to develop that. And so in the years that are coming up, in the year that's coming up for March and then for the general election, we've got to be prepared. We have to get people on board. We need 600 people to cover the 600 precincts that exist in Fresno County, right?
Correct.
And so, so we're starting to do that. We have an organization that we formed called Fresno Coalition, Fresno County Coalition, right? FresnoCountyCoalition.com, where people could go and find out what is involved. They can volunteer. They can leave their information. But tell us about the precinct program. Well, why don't we start with you, Kathy? Why don't you give people a sense of why you think it's important, and how are we going to get 600 people to commit themselves to doing this?
Well, like you said earlier, by doing the precinct walking, they found out that it can double the turnout of the voters. So it's for that reason right there, that's worth going out, talking to people that you know in your neighborhood, or even and if you want to get more involved, you can do a whole precinct, get your neighbors to help you, go out and talk to people. We'll provide you with the information. The other thing is we also have a third level that is going to be involved with the precinct walking, and we are putting out Christian News magazine, and we're just going to ask people. We'll provide them with the magazine to deliver and just drop it off in the driveway, so people can find out about the important issues, Christian Judeo values that are important, and also about the people in their community that could support the Christian Judeo values and support their businesses because they have the same values as you. And you definitely want to go out and support them if you have the same values as what's in the magazine. And they'll have different points of view. They might even, we're hoping that we'll have an article in the paper about the Fresno City Center, which just opened recently. And that's a great resource. A lot of organizations in the past that have operated, solely in different locations. Now it's all centralized, so people can go there and get help, and all the different organizations there to help people get the resources they need, whether it's health, food, medical, and this type of things. So,
yeah, well, Christian News Magazine is an effort to bring unity, and we're being overwhelmed by the secular media. They're not only distorting the news, but they're just telling us flat out lies and manipulation. So how do we respond? So one way is this radio program, Wild About Liberty. But the Marino family has formed KXEX Radio 1550 AM to give us this opportunity. So here's a way that we can speak back. We can bring truth, and we can give people information that is really important for their consideration and how they would vote, for example. But the Christian News Magazine, the Christian community just doesn't vote. Statistically, according to surveys, they're saying that 50% of Christians in America registered to vote. Of those who actually vote, is 25%.
Correct.
So we have to get Christians to the ballot box.
Yes.
And so, and my wife's going to kill me if I keep saying "and so," but this is radio, and I'm trying to be a good radio host. Tom Summers was on the program. He immediately comes out with this deep, powerful, resonating radio voice. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? But regardless, so we've got to get our message out. We have to reach people. The precinct program is important. If you're listening and you are willing to volunteer and take a small amount of your time, really, out of your life to help win at the ballot box, you couldn't do anything more valuable than be a precinct captain. It's just proven to be the most effective way to get a vote. So contact us and let us know you're interested. You can dial us at 559-765-4293. You can go to our website, FresnoCountyCoalition.com. But we really need you to step up. We need you to volunteer and take on a precinct that's basically in your neighborhood around your home, and be a precinct captain and walker. What is that like, Fred? You've done a lot of that. Give people an idea of what they're getting into.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
So I spent, to give you an idea, I spent about 6 hours last time we did this. And I went out 3 times, 2 hours each time, late afternoon. And it was, the other thing is we are going to people who are already registered. And at that, we're going to conservative voters, Republican voters, who have not been voting consistently like you're talking about. So you're going to people who already hold your same values. And you're asking them to please just simply vote. And you don't have to get into a long discussion. Sometimes they happen naturally, about some issue that they're thinking about, and you can talk about that a little bit. But it is not a long conversation. You're just reminding them to please vote, for the future of our country. This election is so critical. And
are most people courteous? Are they mostly?
Yes, they are. I only had one guy get mad at me, but I got mad at him because, but it wasn't a Republican; it was a Democrat, and I was supporting. I was walking a precinct for a candidate,
mm-hmm.
and I admit I got a little huffy, and he got huffy with me. But anyway, it worked out okay. I ended up leaving, and it was fine, but that was unusual because that was talking. We're on opposite sides. But you're going to people who will be on the same side, who are on the same side.
Mm-hmm.
They just, like what you're talking about, they've just kind of given up. They don't think it's worth it anymore. My vote doesn't count, whatever. And but they're on the same side, so it's not that hard. You just remind them. And so I maybe 6-7 hours total. You can do in increments again. You'll have several weeks to do it before the election, so you don't have to go. You can do it any way you want. You'll be the precinct captain will be in charge of your neighborhood. So if you want to find people to help you, you can do that. So there's
and they get good instructions, right? It's not like we're dumping something on them and they wouldn't know what to do. They know they'll know what to do, and there's actually some training involved.
Right. There's a little bit of training involved, and we show you what to say, where to go, what people to contact, and you'll get their name. You'll get the people's name and address and age. And age is important because if they vote all the time and they're 70 years old or so, something like that, they might be able to help you. If they're 50, if they're 40,
sure,
they might be able to help you. If they're 17 or 18, they haven't voted yet because they haven't had an opportunity to vote. So that helps you. Oh, this person's 18, so that means it shows that he hasn't voted yet. But then because of his age, he hasn't had the opportunity yet.
And look at why they're voting. I mean, your family, your kids, your future, the economy, how much you're paying for gas. I mean, this is a critical thing.
Right. Just remind them this, everything's on the table with this election, in the general election in November. Everything we believe in is on the table, and please vote. So it's not complicated, and people will not be upset. They will be, they're actually glad to hear you. Because that you're just simply going to your neighbor, and that helps too. I always say, the first thing I always say is, I'm over on Townsend Avenue, about 3 streets away, so they know automatically that when I'm not from some other part of town, and I'm not trying to sell them something, I'm just trying to get them to vote.
Well, time is slipping away. Kathy, what a treat! Thank you for coming on the program. And we want people to respond to you and to Fred and to this precinct program. It's the most important thing you can do. So please contact us and let us know if you're willing to be a precinct walker. Thanks, Fred. Your leadership is so important to all of us, and we're grateful to you for the time that you've taken and the amount of effort you're putting out every day.
Thank you,
thank
Terry.
you for tuning in to Wild About Liberty. We're here to give you information that can be useful. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Wild About Liberty with Terry Wild, only on KXCX 1550.